Today we are going to discuss what is the significance of anthropological thought to the exam of anthropology in UPSC. Before I go into the details of the topic, I would want to expose you to the syllabus of anthropological thought, which is there in chapter 6 of paper 1. As you can see there, first I would want you to go through the list of topics here so that you can get familiarized, like evolutionism, diffusionism, historical particularism, American diffusionism, etc. So this is the first part of anthropological thought, which we call classical anthropological thought, and followed by the second one, that is this whole thing we call modern anthropological thought. The basis is primarily the time period. All the late 20th century and 21st century thinkers are placed in modern anthropological thought when compared to the first part, which is mostly 19th century and early 20th century. Now, first of all, I would want to expose you to one particular question, that is, when to study this particular topic during your preparation. When we're talking about anthropological thought, I primarily recommend the student to do this particular topic in the beginning of your preparation. First time when a student looks at the syllabus and the kind of names that are there, Brown, Bowers, Malinowski, Leach, or several other names, a student might generally get baffled by the new names. There are so many names out there. The list given in your syllabus looks to be very small when compared to the number of names that we come across in your entire discipline. But the reason why we recommend the students to start with this particular topic is, when you're studying anthropological thought, it helps the student in understanding the historicity of the discipline, that is, how the discipline must have originated and how it must have developed, how it must have changed over a period of time. This can be easily understood when one studies anthropological thought. One should also understand that a theory is basically a reflection of the thinker's mind, and it is the reflection of the time to which the thinker belongs. By looking at the theory, we can also understand the social conditions in which the thinker, he or she, must have lived. For example, in the syllabus, if you see this particular name, there is one person by name Franz Boas, a man who wrote extensively on race. If somebody is writing about race, there must have been something that he must have experienced. He was writing on race out of his own personal experiences. The one who was victim of the racism that was prevalent at that point of time. So, when you are trying to read the theory, you also will come to know the socio-economic and various other conditions which the thinkers must have gone through. It is at this stage I would want to introduce you to one very important person in the discipline, not simply for anthropological thought, but for the anthropology as a whole, as a discipline. It is this man, E.B. Taylor, who happened to be the very first person among the first people who wrote on culture. Hence, he was called culturologist also. He had given the basic definition of the discipline. He has introduced so much of vocabulary. So the bottom line is, when you're starting to study anthropology, it makes sense to begin with the theoretical basis of the discipline, so that you'll understand why a particular topic is introduced in the syllabus, why a particular concept is discussed in, or why a particular social problem, a cultural situation, attains so much of importance in the discussions of anthropology. All this is possible if you first read anthropological thought. And that's where I can say that this will also help a student to know the scope of the subject. When I'm saying scope of the subject, what I mean by that is the list of thinkers that we have seen in the syllabus. They must have not simply given the theory, but they must have worked in various other subfields of anthropology. So somebody like Bowes himself, he was not simply giving a theory, a particular theory in the discipline. He was also a field worker. He was working on the growth of children in particular situations, or growth of children across the races. It looks to be rather unconnected to a social anthropology or theory of anthropology, because most of the people understand it as a discipline that has a lot of social weightage. But then things that are not typically social, they have a biological element of it, or they have linguistic element of it, or several other elements. So a thinker must have worked in various other fields. So when you are actually studying that particular subdiscipline, if you have already done anthropological thought, it would be easy for you to connect it to the theory and write. Why a thinker was studying one particular aspect in culture that actually emerges from his theory, where he had worked, what he must have done in the field. Coming back to talk about what happens in the theory actually. See, all these schools of thought that are mentioned in your syllabus that you had a glance at, all these are actually various approaches to study culture. Meaning somebody has an evolutionary approach, somebody has a diffusionary approach, somebody has a functionalistic approach. There's so many diverse approaches. The meaning of anthropological thought is this entire discipline of anthropological thought helps one try to look at culture from different perspectives. So these are various thought processes, how various thinkers have thought, what are the various approaches each of those thinkers had followed in explaining to people what the culture or the lifestyle of the other people is. So anthropology is seen as a discipline that helps people understand the others, other cultures, other people, etc. This is the basic objective. Anthropology helps people understand the other cultures. But how you understand the other culture is actually given by the approach that is followed by various thinkers. So I would here want to talk only a little about evolution, and I will tell you how the thought actually goes ahead. See, I was talking about this particular man, E.B. Tylor, the first culturologist, the first one to begin with any kind of theoretical approach in anthropology. He emerged into the field primarily due to the influence of none other than Charles Darwin, who was known for his studies of biological evolution. Influenced by Darwin, people like Taylor started applying it to the social situations. I'm not here explaining you the whole lot of evolutionism. I'm only trying to give an example. The impounding concepts such as a movement from simple to complex, or something like indefinite to definite, kind of thinking that was given by Charles Darwin when he was applying it to biological organisms, when he was saying that every organism moves from simple to complex, etc. Similar kind of a thinking was applied to the social situation. So people started to believe that all societies move from simple to complex. In doing so, there are certain changes that occur, certain changes and certain things that emerge, certain things that disappear, etc. Now, let me tell you what actually we do in anthropological thought. See here, when a thinker is proposing a theory, say for example, evolutionist is giving a theory, so he must be having some kind of basic premises based on which he is giving a theory, and he follows a particular kind of an approach in explaining why a culture is what it is. In doing so, he must have made some kind of mistakes, either in understanding the society, or maybe there might be some other kind of inherent weaknesses in his way of working. So based on all those mistakes or criticisms, the next fellow comes up, say in your syllabus, the next one that we see is diffusionism. So based on what is the drawback of evolutionism, diffusionist must have come. And while explaining, the diffusionists must have made certain mistakes. And from those mistakes, the next theories and the chain follows. So with time, the way you understand people, the way you understand different cultures was changing parallel to the technological changes that were happening or the changes in the other disciplines that people were witnessing. When all this was happening, we also see that people from different disciplines were coming into anthropology, especially when you start looking at schools like functionalism. You see that people from altogether different kind of a discipline, say geography, mathematics, or physics, various other life sciences, people started to come into this discipline because of various things that must have attracted. Somebody like Malinowski had read a book like The Golden Bough, which in the upcoming classes we are going to talk about. So one of the thinkers in anthropology must have got influenced because of somebody's writing in the discipline. Though originally he was not from that discipline, he chose to come into this discipline. This is not one. Umpteen number of people were driven to studying of cultures and people because of those writings and readings, and all this had actually strengthened the discipline. So I conclude based on these 3 points. One, a strong recommendation that you start your discipline with anthropological thought, though it looks to be baffling. This would have long-term convenience for you in understanding why a particular topic is studied in anthropology. Secondly, when you're doing anthropological thought, you'll understand how the discipline has evolved from late 19th century to 20th century, 21st century. And you'll also see how different concepts had evolved, how people who were working in anthropology tried to explore the field work from somebody who was simply studying from the library to somebody who wanted to go out, work in the field, live among the people and collect data. Based on the collection of data, how they were trying to theorize. And this also is a discipline, anthropological thought, that exposes you to bizarre cultures and the cultures that were not known to people earlier. Sometimes the cultures that are still continuing to be existing at that level of the so-called primitive stage. So for all that kind of exciting journey in anthropology, anthropological thought would lay a firm foundation for a student. Thank you.